when you have a society that labels things as good and evil, you're unleashing a Pandora's box, and you don't even see it because it's happening in the mind. In duality, there's no emotional development. Instead, emotions are trapped, they're blocked, people are trying to deny them. And so illnesses pop up from that. And that affects the mind. It loses clarity and develops mental illness. That's one way. Yeah, there's other ways to get mental illness too, but duality accelerates it. Duality increases that possibility for mental illness to happen. But remember, that's not the only reason. Yeah, there's stories in our culture that talk about mental illness. Yeah, for example, among the Lakota people, there's this story that comes from Ohunkankan. And this is like recent stories. When I say recent, I mean within the past 2,000 to 5,000 years. Okay? The story has been passed down from oral tradition, and I sometimes, when I remember, I tell it around Halloween. Yeah, when I am telling it in person, and it's kind of scary. Yeah, the way the story goes is this couple had a young girl, and she seemed to be kind of sickly. She was really frail. Yeah, she was smaller than other children the same age as herself. And so they always watched over her because it seemed like her body would hurt just easily. So they really kept a close eye on her. But many times she didn't have anybody to play with because all the kids they're being raised by the men's and women's societies during the day. Yeah, they're becoming emotionally developed so that they can develop spiritually and have clarity of mind. But this girl is really weak. And she doesn't have the strength to be with the other girls to participate in their education. So the mother thinks, okay, she decides to make this girl a doll. Yeah, and so that they can what do you call it? So she has somebody to play with. Yeah, even if it's imaginary, at least that'll keep her busy. So the little girl really becomes doting, she's like a little mother to this doll. And by the time she turns 15, 16 years old, she's still acting like a 4 or 5-year-old kid. The parents don't understand. So then they think, well, maybe if she gets married. Yeah, so they wait until she's about 18 years old, and then they say, the female relatives talk to this girl about, now she's a young woman, they talk to her about getting married, and the girl says okay. Yeah, and so she's kind of pretty by this time. Yeah, she's a young woman. So there's guys that would like to marry her, so they go through the courting ritual, of speaking to her in front of her mother with a buffalo robe covering both of them. Yeah, both the guy and the girl, and the mother standing there making sure they don't do any funny business. Yeah, and it's an interesting courting procedure, but that's part of it. There's other things they do too. And there's one in particular that she takes a liking to. And so she decides that, okay, she'll marry this one guy. And so they have a wedding for her. It's not the same as a church wedding because we're not like that. Yeah? And so, see, the teepees belong to the women. Yeah, so this girl gets a teepee, and she's the wife is the ruler. She's the law inside the teepee. Yeah, and so the man, her husband, respects it. Yeah, and it turns out that he realizes she's like a little kid, even though she has the body of a woman. She's like a little kid. And he notices that she really spends a lot of time with this doll, still treating it like if it was her real kid. And the husband, he wants to have children with her, and he wants to have sex with her, and she keeps pushing him off, and she acts like she's being raped, and so he's like, that this is not right. Yeah, there's something wrong. So he says to the girl's family that he's gonna leave. Yeah, that this marriage is over because he said there's something not right. So of course they're sad to see him go because he's a good hunter. And he's a good man. Yeah, he's a fair man. And so he gets his stuff from the teepee and he tells his wife, "We're no longer married, and good luck to you." And she doesn't say anything. She has her back towards him, and she's singing children's songs to this doll, still treating it like it was a real baby. She doesn't even pay attention to the guy, so he leaves, goes back to his camp. Then the girl, for some reason, is not eating, and she's getting skinny, and so the parents are getting concerned. So they decide they're gonna make a feast for their daughter and honor her by saying, trying to find, trying to get her to focus on healthy female attributes, characteristics, and they're trying to bring her out of acting like a little kid. So they do this meal, and they have a little ceremony for her, and she comes to the meal, and all her favorite kind of foods are there. Yeah, and she's sitting with her family and a few people inside her mother's teepee. And she says, "Oh no, I have to go. My baby's crying," she says. And the mother says, "I don't hear anything." And because she knows to go along with the daughter, otherwise the daughter really freaks out. Yeah. So she says, "I don't hear anything." And the girl says, "Yeah, can't you hear that? She's really crying loud." So she's just frail because she hasn't eaten in such a long time, but she manages to make it back to her teepee, and so she's there now, don't cry, I'm here, mommy's here, she starts saying to the doll. And the parents are just frustrated now. It's like, what are we going to do with this girl? All of a sudden, they don't hear anything. Yeah, they don't hear anything at all. So they go over to their daughter's teepee, and the mother walks in first, and then she just screams. The mother. When the father comes in, he really gets frightened too. And what they saw is that the girl was laying on the ground, and her eyes are wide open, bug-eyed, and her mouth is wide open, as if she's been scared to death. And the doll is sitting up on the ground. It's not moving, it's just sitting up. I don't like this story. Just use your imagination, yeah. The girl had a mental illness, and she thought, she saw this baby as real, and at one point she came to clarity, yeah, and then she looked at the doll. She looked at her baby, and she realized in her moment of clarity she realized that her baby had transformed into a doll. That's what she thought. And that scared her to death. Yeah, she thought this was a real baby the whole time. And in a moment of clarity, she saw the reality, but she didn't interpret it that way. She thought that the reality was the baby was real. Do you see what I mean? But when she came to reality, this she thought she went crazy when she already was crazy. And and in her mind, her baby had transformed into this doll, and she totally freaked out. Totally freaked out, and her heart stopped. Remember, she hadn't eaten in days. She's just almost like a walking skeleton. And her heart stopped, and she died from fright. Yeah, she had a mental disorder. So this story is several thousand years old, and this shows you that we had mental illness among our people. A lot of Indian races say that, we were perfect until the white man came and brought us all their diseases and mental diseases. And no, we had them. If we did not have mental illness, we would not need medicine men and women. So that means the fact that we did have medicine men and medicine women is showing to you that we had mental illness too. Why would we have a doctor if there's no disease? You see what I mean? So this shows you that it existed among our people. And later on, a ceremony was developed specifically for depression and other diseases related to that, in which you have to eat an animal. The patient has to eat a certain animal that, if I tell you what it is, it's going to really gross you out. But this is only for people who have mental illness. Yeah, that they have to eat meat from this animal, because this animal represents the west direction, and the west direction represents clarity, cleansing to achieve clarity, cleansing to achieve healing. It's not a horse, okay? Because horses came when the conquistadors came to Central and South America. So no, this ceremony is older than that. It has to do with eating a certain animal that represents the West. And today people would say, "Oh, gross." Yeah. But when you live in a different world, like our ancestral world, this totally makes sense. And then there's certain songs that have to be sung while preparing and eating the meat. Yeah? And then the Heokas come. And the Heokas are also connected to the thunder and lightning. And their job is also to cleanse, but through laughter. So it's not just laughter alone, it's not just to feel good alone or think a certain way, because this is an illness. This is a disease. And sometimes drastic matters require drastic solutions. And this ceremony is like that. Yeah? It involves the four directions because that gives a sense of stability and to have a foundation to stand on, to begin the new healing way, and then the ceremony's done. Yeah? But there's more to it than that. I'm not going to tell you everything because there's new agers that listen to this show and they're waiting for me to tell every little thing so they can write it down and put it in their shaman courses and all that kind of nonsense. And I will not do that. But those of you who are my students and who have attended my seminars, you know what exactly I'm talking about. So that's a serious thing. Yeah, it's a serious, it's drastic. But that's how this disease is. It's very, very difficult. Some people will have one of these diseases and appear to be totally okay, but they have this disease. And internally, there is a strife. Yeah, so it's very difficult. So we had these problems too before white people came. Yeah, we had anxiety disorders, we had mental illnesses, all these things that deal with the mind that people have more today. So we dealt with it in a certain way that's based on the Lakota Star Knowledge Foundation. And that's how we were able to deal with it. But today's Western world, the foundation of today's Western world is duality. And they're going about these mental illnesses in a roundabout way. That a lot of these ways may actually be ineffective. And they may actually move it further into the disease. But it has to, duality makes it worse, is what I'm saying. Yeah, it's going to pop up. But if your society is dualistic, the chance is extremely high that the disease is going to progress no matter what. But when you're living on principles that are similar to Lakota Star Knowledge principles, you have a better chance at tackling it. Which means change your foundation and then take it one step at a time. Yeah, I still have faith in psychiatry, but you have to find the right one, because a lot of these psychiatrists are crazy. They have the disorders themselves. Yeah, this is honest to God, goodness truth. But remember, in every group, no matter what it is, if it's doctors, teachers, lawyers, or mechanics, or even the gender, yeah, men, women, Indians, white people, whatever group it is, they're always going to find healthy and unhealthy in each group. So you cannot say everybody in that group is the same, because that's not true. That would be like you're treating them like machines without souls. Yeah, but they do have souls. Therefore, they're not machines. They have personalities. So they're not all the same. So that's why I really don't like the Scientology bullshit, where they say that psychiatry is not good. You just have to find the right person. Yeah, you have to. When you go buy a pair of shoes, you just buy a good-looking pair just because it's good-looking? No, you try it on. Give me a size 22. In Germany, that would be really tiny. In German measurements, it's different than in America. Yeah, America uses a total different system. So 22 would be really pinky feet. It's children's feet in German measurements. Oh, shoot. Anyway, you have to try it on and see if it feels good. So you walk around in it for a few minutes to see, is it making your toes all bend inwards, or do you have a lot of room to wiggle your toes, or do you have too much room in your toe wiggling area? Yeah, does it hurt your ankle? Does it hurt the arch of your foot? Yeah. Are the shoestrings too long? Sometimes that can be a problem for some people. But you take the time to check it out. So why not do that to yourself too? And everything that you do, take the time to check things out. You owe it to yourself. You're a healthy person. You are a blessing. And sometimes to achieve blessings, you got to go through some difficulty, but that is for you to finish by learning from it and making the best of the situation. And then you receive knowledge and wisdom. Now you can help others with that. See, you're a blessing. And to fully accomplish this, you take the time to check yourself out so you come to peace with the difficulties from your past, as I said earlier. And that's how you learn what the role difficulties play. That's not a bad thing. It's about learning. I know it's hard sometimes. I know that. We all go through that. I do too. I'm going through it as well. We make the best of it. We try to learn from it as much as we can, because that sets up the next thing. It influences the next thing. So you see, you have something to say about your future. May not turn out the way you think, but it might turn out better. You see what I mean? So, then you do the same thing. When you're going to find a dentist, you're going to find somebody who fits you. Yeah. When you're going to find a family doctor, you find someone who fits you. Unfortunately, in rural areas, you're stuck with what's there. Yeah. So you have to just trust in that person. Sometimes that's hard to do. It's one of the benefits of living in a very urban area where you have choices. Yeah, and you find somebody who feels right to you, and you work with them and see if it is right. If it isn't, then you move on and find another person, because they're all different. So we go to physical doctors to get checkups so that if we find something wrong, we can catch it and then take the necessary procedures to give that health. We should be doing this to our mental and emotional well-being too, so that we catch these things. You deserve it. You deserve clarity of mind. You deserve emotional intelligence. So we should be getting checkups on this too every year. The older we get, we might have to do it more times a year, just because that's the way the body is. It needs a little bit more maintenance. That's okay. That's just part of the journey. Anyway, like I said, the West direction is really involved concerning mental part of the self. And so any